Hello, Andrew.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm really well now.
Are you good?
Yeah,
Good.
this was very welcoming. So
Oh, that means the world to me. Hello, Riggs. Hello, buddy. He's like distracted over there.
yeah,
Okay, you know what? I am going to let you, I was going to introduce you, but this is our first time actually meeting,
Yes.
and welcome to my home, and thank you for being here and being open to talk to us. I know you have a lot to share, so do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
yeah. So my name is Andrew Goff. This is Riggs. He's my service dog. Um, I have Riggs as a result of a mental health injury. That being PTSD. That's the most common understanding of it. Or it's not a disorder for me. Post-traumatic stress disorder. It's an injury. I wasn't born this way. It's as a result of things that I've experienced. And that was from 23 years of being a soldier and a police officer concurrently. So a civilian police officer with the municipality and a soldier with Canadian Armed Forces, starting both at 19 years of age. So far too young in my grown-up opinion now, my adult opinion. Mm-hmm. Geez, was I excited at 19 years old. And I've had a lot of blessings as a result of being open about my mental health and living a better life with choosing the things as overt and against my mental health injury as it is with having a service dog, but creating some great things with it and some, a not-for-profit organization now.
Yes, which is flourishing.
Yes. And
congratulations on that.
Thank you. And that's me now. The police officer role for me has come to a close. The role I have as a soldier is also winding down. I still serve, but I'm awaiting a release. So what my purpose is now, my drive is veterans and everyday heroes, and trying to squash the stigma of mental health, not only in those difficult vocations, but in men.
100%. So joining us, I keep forgetting to introduce our Rams on R.A.W, which is really authentic women, and you're a really authentic man. And I think it's really important to give a space to men, and especially when it comes to mental illness, because I think men are always taught to be tough and they can't talk about it. So thank you, first of all, for being open enough to talk to us about this today. And I'm going to start off by asking you, what does authenticity mean to you?
Oh my goodness. I think it's a very difficult thing to achieve. So maybe defining what it isn't first. Because I lived a lot of my life not authentic to myself. And I'll argue still today that, I haven't reached the apex of that. But my injury and my travel into that valley of a mental health crisis was due to that lack of authenticity, of being more true to what made me uncomfortable, morally, ethically, physically. What brought me joy, right? Instead of sort of agreeing to what was joyful in others and participating in it as part of, the team, the group. And not speaking up for myself. I had a very similar conversation today about that and how different I would act today, knowing myself better.
So do you think that's why we were talking about this just prior to you as well, that what is it for us that we don't speak up for ourselves? Do you think it's just maturity, or do you think it just comes with time that we grow into ourselves and our morals and values change? Is that sort of what happened with you?
From my experience, especially when you enter, and I'll call them institutions, right? As a member of the military or a member of a police service, you're entering these huge machines, and with business models, right? They're, and you have to sort of fit in to a mold that you're squished into, right? It's high pressure, right? It's not one with larger walls and unfenced fields. It's very purposefully designed to create a certain type of individual.
I couldn't even imagine.
Right. Like that's what basic training is. And as a young man from Northern Ontario, seeking his fortune in exploration and saying, I could be a soldier. My grandfather was a soldier, and he went through war. So how tough can this be? Like, it's pretty peaceful, but it starts right away. Right?
So that kind of leads me into my next question. If I was to ask you, and I'm sure there's probably many, just hearing even just a little bit about you, your most raw moment in your life that has shaped you as to the person you are now.
I might cry a bit.
Okay, this is raw, and you're in a safe space. So.
Yeah. So I think, when I finally realized that, I wasn't the person that, especially entered into those professions, one was far too late, right? It takes, because you don't realize you're starting to go down that path until some really poor decisions are being made. So I'm married still to my high school sweetheart. Elizabeth and I met in high school. So having the opportunity to know me but granted not for very long because I started young, but before I started as a police officer or a soldier. But the progression to sort of the downturn of my life took a while. And when you're growing up in that environment as well, as much as my wife and my children were, it wasn't until it really started getting bad, I think, before they even noticed. Both my wife and I are very community oriented. So, she would volunteer a lot and, working shift work, having young children, and one with autism that we didn't know of at this time in my story. Like the pressures of life were pretty real. And I escaped every moment that I could. I isolated. I found other places to be. And that became very tumultuous in our relationship. And I used alcohol as a medicine. And one night when she was out volunteering and I was attempting, I'll say that because I was attempting to look after the children, resentment, I think, for both of us started to grow, and me intoxicated and her sober, her coming home after this event. And because I was not present, she would say things like, I'm the default parent, you're never around. And, there's a lot of shame, right? And guilt. And I just lost it. I turned it into anger. And, I started throwing things around and the kids were there and swearing. And I had this rule: I would not swear in front of the kids. They're older now, so,
right.
It happens. But, at the time, I wouldn't do it. And I left, and I shouldn't have, because I was not sober. And I went to a friend's place and I settled down and I got sober, and I went home and I slept in the basement, and I woke up with all of them around me, and my wife saying, you need to get help. And I was like, yeah, I do. That was, I think, the first moment in my life where I looked at all three of them, and that was all my joy. Right there. Who I was treating like shit, saying, you need to get better. And it was from that moment on that I started the whole thing, like everything, getting him, which is a process, but you know, it's one that I started, you know, seeing doctors, telling my employers, and choosing them over my careers.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. That's what needed to happen.
I just need to collect myself. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
It was a long answer to your question.
No,
but
it was a beautiful answer. Which brings me to Riggs. Like, what's the story behind Riggs?
So in part of that journey, I went to a program called Project Trauma Support. And that was through referral from a friend who had gone and found very helpful for them. And while I was at that program, because it was geared towards veterans and first responders, there was 2 individuals there, both Afghanistan veterans, that had service dogs. I didn't have a dog. In fact, I was quite anti-dog.
Were you?
Yeah, we grew up with... He's like a little person, though. Right? We had dogs growing up, but they were, you know, garage dogs, and they, you know, smell.
Right.
You know, they weren't really playful. I didn't play with them. And my mother-in-law had dogs, but they were always little tiny, you know, like yappy things. And I just didn't see it didn't serve me. So
Right.
because I was very judgmental back then, I didn't see the value. But I saw how these dogs interacted with these 2 soldiers, and noticing how I was doing some of the very similar things, and how if that dog was helping me, how much better I would be. So it was almost immediately after I got home that I started trying to find a service dog, which is not easy.
Is it not? I don't even know what the process would be for that.
And
So
I would say that's one of the primary reasons I started Veterans and Everyday Heroes, was knowing the process that it was for me, an individual who was very close to suicide, that it shouldn't take that long, and it shouldn't be that difficult if it's not going to help everybody. But I just knew, like, I don't know what it was. I was like, this is going to help me. From a guy that never had dogs as an adult to just like that, there was just something about it.
Instant, like where as soon as you met Riggs,
Heck
you
no.
just no.
He's actually my 3rd.
Oh, really? Okay.
So the first dog that was assigned to me was called Rigby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not his birth name. And unfortunately, Rigby and I didn't bond.
Okay.
He was scared of me. He was very timid. So the breeder trainers noticed it, because I would go there like multiple times a week to try to build a bond. And she said, you know, unfortunately, it's not going to work. And I could tell that was hard for her to say, but she was right. And I got another dog, and his name was Magnus.
Okay.
And he fit that name really well, because he was a one-person dog. He bit a couple people, including my son, and was not a service dog.
That would have been good.
And then Riggs here, well, his name when he came to me was Minty.
Minty?
Yes.
Oh, we like Riggs.
Yeah. It was the kids that always kept it. Yeah. It was, I don't know why. What I do know is he was homed with a young female sexual assault victim to start. And if you've ever spent any time with Riggs, you'll notice that he's pretty lazy.
Chill, yeah.
Right? And I describe him, for those that maybe grew up in, you know, the 90s, like a Spicoli. You know, like a surfer dude kind of dog.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the issue with her, is she had some difficulty controlling him. Okay. Where, you know, for me, like, I can tell he doesn't want to do it, but he will, because
you're gonna make
I'm
him
the boss.
Yeah.
I just don't know if she became his boss, sort of thing. And so he was returned. And then she's like, let's try one more. And I really resented him for a while.
Did you? Yeah.
Because I really liked Magnus. But I knew it wasn't going to work, and I was just grumpy about it. But of course, like all of you have had the opportunity to see him, like his sort of dopey little face, and my family was instantly in love.
Oh, so sweet.
And
How could you not love this?
And then it didn't take long for me to take to his personality. And
And how long have you had Riggs?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah, he's 7 now.
Wow.
Takes 2 years to train them. So
And I hear he's quite the healing dog, right?
so I've been told. Yeah. I mean,
that.
for me, my experience is that we spent 4 years at the Ontario Police College as an instructor, 3 years doing scenario-based training, and a year doing defensive tactics. And, he's got his picture up as faculty. People, I'm sure I don't hear a fraction of the stories that people have about him.
I bet.
Right.
I bet.
And he's just become, he's a presence for sure. He changes a room. Yeah. He's just so
He's got
kind.
this calming kind of like, I'm just like, oh, I'm all chill. It could be
Yeah.
surfer dudette with him.
Yeah.
I have a question, and if you're not comfortable answering it, you don't have to at all. But again, not because we've just met and I don't know a bunch about you. Do you mind me asking what was if there was just one event that caused you to have your PTSD? And I don't even know, sorry about my ignorance. If
No,
I'm
it's
even
okay.
wording
That's why
that
we're here,
correctly.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I want to be able to do is openly talk and have these conversations. And I'm not always going to find the right words, but hopefully you can guide me a little bit on that.
There's, a couple different diagnoses for PTSD. There can be single event occurrences that can cause the symptoms, PTSD symptoms, in individuals, and there can be that, and many events. Right, one event of doing failed CPR on an individual may not cause that mental impact, but 100 might. And one of those being an 11-year-old cerebral palsy kid might. One of them being a 99-year-old male that's been married for 65 years and his wife is in the other room might. Right? Having knives pulled on you and, having to defend your life might. For me, it was death by 1,000 cuts. And then I went overseas, and then I was nearly kidnapped. And then we evacuated an embassy from Northern Africa. That I know has caused a lot of issue with my team. That's not really being acknowledged by the government or recognized. So for me, it's been all of it, many things. And the incident, I think I was holding myself together okay until I went to Libya. But it was after that things started getting really bad. So.
And what, do you mind me asking what happened?
You ask me anything you like.
Okay.
You don't need to preface.
Okay, I won't preface. What occurred in Libya for you?
So I trained to be a close protection operator with the military. So bodyguarding in high risk environments. So in Libya post Gaddafi, there's reopening of many international missions, so diplomatic missions back into the capital. So there was a transitional government put into place, largely supported by NATO. And as a result, and things were pretty actually jubilous after Arab Spring and a lot of the creating democracy and and I say creating because it's kind of what happens in these nations. And we were, I was kind of excited to go. I was like, this is gonna be fun. I signed up for the first rotation, and I got time off work and everything. I started pre-deployment. Wasn't able to go because they shut the mission down because they weren't quite sure of the stability. But then at the 6th rotation of it, I was finally chosen to go again. And so I took time off work again and got on a plane and and went to North Africa as one of the close protection team members. There was only 18 of us, and not all of us close protection. There's task force commander, and so it's kind of like the Wild West of missions, right? Although we had nice accommodations, but we didn't have a lot of support.
So were you nervous, like leading up to this? Like what
I'm
were
not
you
sure.
feeling? Like what was going through your mind at that time?
You just sort of conjured up an image of me in one of the vehicles in the back seat you replace the team that's already there, and you do like a handover. So the team that was already there came to get us at the airport, and they threw all our bags in this big flatbed truck. And I remember the team leader sitting in the back of this flatbed truck, making sure all the bags stayed in. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking around Tripoli, and I'm like, what have I done? Strap yourself in, because you got a few months still here, buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I crapped my pants. I think, there may be one guy that if he's watching this probably wouldn't have crapped his pants, but I think the rest of us did. Yeah. And then the second day I was there during this handover is when we were put into a situation where there's a congestion of vehicular traffic, and I believe on purpose. And had firearms pulled on us, and people started running towards the vehicle because the vehicles are diplomatically marked. Like, they know which ones are embassy vehicles. A lot of money in kidnapping game. And when we were there was many people that were from different missions. They just didn't know how good Canadians were, and we got away. So I was injured. I have a spinal injury. Luckily not shot. We stayed in the vehicle, which were armored. But that was just day two, right? And then I believe it was July 14th, 2014. Our replacements from Ottawa were actually in the airport in Ottawa waiting to come get us, like to do the handover. However, the tensions in the country had built up again, and a state of civil war, which I believe still kind of exists today. Much of the geopolitical situation over there is difficult at best, but when you create a power vacuum, including those that might police, a lot of that went to local militias, and still very tribal, even in a big city. They started fighting each other. I'm simplifying, but They started fighting each other. The airport, the international airport, was destroyed, and we had to evacuate the embassy by land. So that was a 16-hour drive across the desert from Tripoli to Tunis, Tunisia. That was on the 30th of July. So for a couple of weeks, we didn't even know how we were getting home. So
how do you come back from something like that? Like, how do you actually, when you have such, and I guess it's like any traumatic event, but this is like a massive traumatic event. How do you live, and I guess that's what's led you in a way to the PTSD, but how do you live your daily life and not allow that part of your life to kind of take over your everyday life? Like, do you find that you have certain fears when it comes to even when you're with your kids, or
Well, that's part of what getting him was all about. I often get asked, what does he do to assist me? Maybe. So we're at a coffee shop, and for most people, probably 99 out of 100, they go into a coffee shop. They maybe already know what they want, or they order something, they grab their coffee, and they leave. I go to the coffee shop. Where's the exit? Where's the entrance? Okay, they look trustworthy. Who's behind me? Who's sitting at that chair, right? taking rigs and putting him into a certain guard, he'll face away from me. I've just lost 50% of my hypervigilance because he's watching for me, right? And yes, it's irrational, but that's part of the symptoms of the injury is you're constantly in that fight, flight, or freeze moment. Even in your house right now, I pretty much know the layout. I know how I would get out if I had to, right?
It's amazing, right? And I've have friends that are police officers, and anytime we would go out, they would always need to know where the exits were. And I thought, it's amazing. Like they could point them out without even looking. So I realized
a lot of it's because of mental health. And the cop's chair, they'll call it too, the one that's facing the doorway, the primary entrance. I'm the same, and I didn't realize that. Like it wasn't until my wife pointed it out once when in my 20s. She's like, "Why do you always need to sit?" I'm like, "Oh, I never really thought about it."
it's just innately almost in you, right?
Yeah,
So.
it is difficult. It's ever present. It can be challenging to trust the world, right? And I think that was part of my decision when I started to get better was, and I alluded to it before, my judgment as a younger man towards everything that needed to stop. And I just needed to let more love in.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you on behalf of all of us for serving our country and doing what you do to make this world a better place. Like that is just so heartwarming. And if somebody is watching or listening at home and they are going through mental health issues or PTSD, is there advice that you would give them that you wish that you could have given yourself at a younger age?
That's a great question. Trust is a difficult thing with those that have this injury or mental health in general. But please do know that even if someone in your life right now doesn't believe you, that there are plenty of us out here that do. And if you're going to let yourself trust anybody, I'm one of them. And there's many more.
That's beautiful.
So,
thank you.
Well,
now, more of a fun question,
Yeah.
a little bit lighter. If you could have every single person that you have ever met in your life, dead or alive, and you could only look for one person in that room, who would it be?
question. My grandfather, my Opa, yeah. Because he was a World War II veteran, a German one. And I can guarantee that he suffered. And I just want to hug him and say that I understand and I'm sorry you had to do it alone. Yeah. I don't know, that wasn't that lighthearted.
I know, I didn't mean to make you cry.
No, but it's a happy cry though. Like,
It's a happy cry.
if there's a chance that he heard me.
Do you feel like he's still present in your life and kind of watching over you?
I think about him every day. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a tough man, but he loved us. Yeah.
And you have 3 children?
Two.
2 children, a boy and a girl?
A boy and a girl, yeah.
And do you feel now that, where your life has taken you along the way, do you feel like you're a much better parent knowing what you know? Or do you find what has happened in your life has made you more of a protective parent than maybe you would have been if you didn't have these situations happen?
I still have lots to learn.
We all do.
I think that my children feel that I'm approachable. I know that they know I have their back. I do need a lot more of understanding towards my son and his autism, and I do need to give them more space. I was a very protective parent as a younger man, and now seeing, my daughter's gonna be 18 in February and my son 14 and later this month, that they're very capable people, and I just need to be there to be their cheerleader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Good for you. Well, I wish you and Riggs all the best, and I can't wait to see where this all leads and how many people we're going to help through your journey and you just speaking out. And I'm sure you're going to be a guest on this show again.